An elite team of firefighters from Perth braced themselves to explore the depths of a 100-year-old abandoned mine shaft in sandstone. The crews were sent to look for missing Beverley prospectors Jennie and Raymond Kellett.
9-0, very decomposed.
I was actually there when that happened.
A forensic team is heading here from Perth to investigate.
It took them 2 days to sort the safe retrieval, so we knew on the 10th, yeah.
That was Ray's body.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that moment is like?
No. I couldn't tell you what I thought in that period of time. We knew that Ray and Jennie wouldn't have gone missing up there. I'd seen the terrain. I got taken out there the day before. So from our point of view, yeah, we thought it was foul play from day one.
The police at this point of the investigation finds a body, but they don't seem to, am I correct in understanding, believe it's foul play they're looking at?
They treated it as believed to be an accident. But the problem for me with all of that is, where's Jennie? One person might fall down a mine shaft, but what does that second person do? They raise the alarm.
Okay. I'm now officially frustrated, but I won't take it out on you. You've got a taste of it anyway. And that chap you just saw talking there when it all went to, well, the chap you just saw talking there, we'll move on, was Mark Reynolds. He's actually someone, Perth is a small world. I taught him in a forensic science program when he was a police officer running forensics, and he went on to get a PhD and now consults to all sorts of police services all around the world. And he believed that what had happened was foul play, but sadly not too many other people agreed with him. So let me introduce you now to Ray and Jennie Kellett. It was a second marriage for both of them, and they were described as laminated together. They were joined at the hip. They were very happy, had a lovely life, were both working in the mines, because in Western Australia that's a good way to make good money very, very fast. We have a breed, if you like, of workers called FIFOs, which means fly in, fly out. So they live in Perth or elsewhere in Western Australia, fly in for sort of 2 weeks on or 3 weeks on and then 1 week off back home. It's a hard life, but it has very, very good pay. So Ray and Jennie were both doing that. It's just another picture of them. And one of their colleagues was this gentleman, and I use the term very loosely. This is Graham Mill. He was a workmate. He was trained in search and rescue. He was first aid trained. And as part of the work on the mines, he formed a bit of a friendship with Jennie, and she loaned him some books, and they got to know each other. There were rumours at some point that he and Jennie may have been having an affair. They only have the status of rumours. He was known to be, how can I put this politely, quite free with his favours, and had been part of at least 2 other marriage breakups involving women that he had become involved with. Okay. He, Jennie and Ray formed a plan to go to find some gold, because in that particular region it had been mined for gold for many, many years. There were any number of abandoned mine shafts where people had gone down looking for gold and perhaps didn't find any. But you hear these stories of people then going down the mine shaft and, oh goodness gracious, there is gold there. So the 2 of them prepared for it, the 3 of them I should say. Ray and Jennie practiced abseiling techniques at home so that they could get down the mine shaft, and they planned to go on an expedition and make their fortune. Here's a map that was found, because as you will have realised, Ray has died, and in fact you'll find out that Jennie is found to have died as well. Here's a map that they drew, and you'll see towards the top of the map there's something that says first hole. This was all drawn by Graham Milne, and it's his handwriting. That becomes important later. So first hole, it seems, was where they planned to go. He asked the Kellets to keep their exact destination quiet. His reason was that somebody else might come and find the gold before they did. But in retrospect, one wonders why that was. Now, Ray and Jennie left Perth with their dog called Ella, a Great Dane, and started the 700 kilometre, what would that be, guys, about 500 miles or something? Something like that? Yeah, near enough. To a tiny town called Sandstone. This is the main street in Sandstone. Busy, as you can see. Big traffic problems, probably needs a set of traffic lights. And this is Sandstone, and about 30 kilometres south of Sandstone was where they were going to set up camp. Here's another aerial look at it. Not to scale, obviously. And you'll see, by the way, the body was found somewhat to the north of the camp, but the initial search was to the south. Why was that? Well, all will come clear. Here's Ella. And she was a very well-trained dog, did not chase after anything. She'd been a farm dog. She knew, for example, not to chase after kangaroos. She was very devoted to them and stuck to them like a limpet. So they spend a day or so prospecting, and then Graham Milne leaves the campsite. And there are various reasons given for this, but he leaves the campsite. The campsite was set up with four-wheel drive vehicles, four-wheel drive motorbikes, and all the gear you would need, water, food, prospecting equipment, just about everything. Now, Milne's version of what happened is that Ella had been chasing after kangaroos, and Milne's version was, I didn't come here to go chasing after a lost dog all the time, I came here to go prospecting. Now, this all came out because there was an inquest later and Mr. Milne gave evidence. But at this point, though, when he leaves the campsite, no one thinks anything untoward because firstly, nobody knew exactly where they were going, but secondly, they weren't due back for a few days anyhow. However, on the 28th of March, which was, should do my sums better, but about a week or so after they'd gone out to that area, Ella is found at a caravan park in Sandstone. She'd managed to travel about 30 kilometres alone to civilization. She was found dehydrated, emaciated, and on her own with nobody else. The family called the satellite phone belonging to Ray and Jennie. Guess who answers? Graham Milne answers. He was meant to be, the phone was meant to be with them. The family then, when Ella was found, reported Ray and Jennie Kellett missing, and the police headed out, and also the people from the Shire, the rangers, and they go out to that campsite and they search around it. Only the campsite, of course, because they asked Mr. Milne which way the couple, or which way they all went and which way the couple would have gone, and he directed them south of the campsite, even though in due course, Ray's body was found north of the campsite. Okay. And a constable, police constable, somewhere near the campsite smells a foul odour. That was put down to there being a dead kangaroo somewhere, even though the smell was from the mine shaft. The tactical response group, which is the police, highly trained abseilers, the people who go out if there's a terrorist threat, they're super highly trained in all sorts of areas, they looked down, in fact, a particular mine shaft near the odour and said there was nothing down there. Okay, they looked down. They didn't go down it, but they looked down. Said they could see to the bottom and there was nothing there. The search and rescue people a few days later checked the same mine shaft and declared it clear. This is one of the mine shafts. It's just a mine shaft. This is what the country looks like out there. You might think, it would be really easy to get lost. And that was the working theory with the police, that they were dealing with 2 missing people. But in fact, there are landmarks there, there are clear tracks there, and it's actually not easy to get lost out there at all. Please take my word for it, particularly with experienced people who are used to the bush. So when the police are doing their search, they ask Mr. Milne to help them. And they leave him at the campsite overnight alone. Now, he was the last person to see the Kellets alive, correct? And if you are an amateur detective or even a not amateur detective, who do you look at most closely? You look at the last person to see them alive, correct? Yeah. Don't you think he should have been treated as a suspect? What sort of opportunities did he have whilst left overnight by police if there happened to be incriminating evidence? Huge opportunity, didn't he? So they left him and he helped them by sending them in the wrong direction, which is very helpful. Just very much off topic, but it reminds me that it can be very difficult sometimes for the last person to see someone alive, or even the first person to find the body is the other person who can be a prime suspect. And I'm very good friends with a couple who found their daughter, their high school age daughter, dead on the floor of their kitchen, having been stabbed multiple times. It was her father who found his daughter. And of course, he was instantly treated by police as the first suspect and the prime suspect. So you imagine the position as a dad, finding the body of your daughter, calling the police, and then being removed, sat down, arrested, interviewed. In this case, of course, he was unarrested very soon, but can you imagine how that would add to your trauma? Anyhow, back to this one. For some reason, they did not treat Mr. Milne as a suspect, which I think is extraordinary. But I suppose if you decide in advance that it's a missing persons case, then you would want his help, wouldn't you? Yeah. So remember what we talked about with tunnel vision and the decisions you make and the way you interpret evidence being influenced by your first version in your head of events? Well, this is what's happening with the police here. So, here's someone being lowered down the mine shaft, a firefighter, and the reason he was lowered down the mine shaft was this missing people was a big media thing, and the media was wanting to know what the police were doing and they were wanting footage, so they decided to carry out a demonstration of what they would do and how you would search mine shafts. So this firefighter was lowered down the same shaft I've been telling you about, in front of all the media cameras, with the police saying, this is how we go about searching. And what does he find down the bottom of the mine shaft? He finds Ray's body. It had been missed by the first 2 sets of official searchers who'd looked down, including the police. Now, that was a tad embarrassing for the police because the media cameras were there. And lo and behold, there is a body there after all, which had been missed. So, the other thing that was found near the top of the shaft were cigarette butts and also the remains of a campfire. Okay, you're the investigator, or at least you're a police officer running the media demonstration. First, a body's been found quite unexpectedly, and I would imagine you would be saying inside, how do I handle this? But there's cigarette butts. What would you do with the cigarette butts? Collect them, wouldn't you? Nah, we didn't do that. We left them there. Yeah, we wandered off and we collected them quite some days later. So we didn't collect them. And of course, this is now a crime scene, and everybody has tromped all over it, haven't they? Here. But can you think of any reason why they would not collect the butts? I can't think of one reason. I just can't. It beggars belief. But no, they didn't. So they extracted Ray from the hole on the 10th of April, and he'd been found sort of down and slightly to the right. The hole veered to the right a bit, which would explain why his body wasn't seen. When he came out, he had certain injuries. They obviously did an autopsy on him. His injuries were largely to the top of his body, which is interesting because if you happened to be lost and tripped and fell into the mine shaft, which was the working hypothesis, or in fact what the police decided had happened, wouldn't you expect some injuries to, say, your ankles and feet? Because inevitably you'd go down feet first, wouldn't you? But no, nothing. Just to the top of him. And one of the bones that was fractured was the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is like your Adam's apple, and the way a hyoid bone gets fractured is by some form of blunt force or strangulation. And as part of the investigation into this, I looked at the percentages of causes of hyoid bone fracture, and it was well over 90% was strangulation of those fractures found on people. So another pretty good working hypothesis which never came up was maybe somebody strangled him. Maybe. Okay. His clothes were checked. He had no shirt on, which is extraordinary, because if he's wandering off getting lost and accidentally falling down a mine shaft, wouldn't you expect in the Australian desert heat and sun that he would be wearing some sort of shirt? But he was found without his shirt. We'll never know why. But his shoes were looked at. His shoes had a very deep tread, and his blood was found up in the tread. And Mark Reynolds, the chap I was telling you about, who used to be police forensics and is now independent, he's actually a bloodstain pattern expert. And he said that the only way he can explain it was that Ray was standing in a pool of his own blood, which is also not consistent, is it, with Ray wandering off looking for Ella the Great Dane and accidentally falling down a mine shaft? Doesn't work, does it? So he has, at some point, been standing in a pool of his own blood. Okay. The family is asked to come and get all the belongings, the search having been called off. In around June or July, the cigarette butts were eventually removed from the mine shaft. And there were 2 sets of DNA on the cigarette butts. Milne's and Jennie's. Someone has been standing there, presumably, although, of course, the butts can come from elsewhere. You can't assume because they're found there that that's where they were deposited, but this is what it looked like. Milne's and Jennie's DNA was found there. Were they standing there smoking while Ray was down the hole? There's a thing called circumstantial evidence, where if nobody sees what's happened, you have to draw inferences from everything else you find. And that is obviously an important piece of evidence. There was also a water bottle found down the shaft between Ray's legs, and there was only one set of DNA on that, and it was Milne's. Milne's DNA was down there. None of Ray's blood was found on the water bottle, even though there was blood elsewhere down the shaft. So this is all becoming quite peculiar. Milne, I'll call him Milne. Milne agrees to a media interview. You just can't resist having a moment of fame, can you? And he clearly didn't believe he was under suspicion. That's him in the interview. He's crying because it's been so tough on him, as in Milne. He's upset for himself. Okay. In November, later on in November, after he's given that interview, he's arrested and taken by the police for questioning. So this is months now, months after it all happened. He's questioned, his equipment is seized, and he's released without charge. And it's so hard for the poor man. I mean, my heart bleeds for him. You don't want to be on the receiving end of my sarcasm. Okay. Later on, in 2020, there was a coronial inquest. Here's the lovely Mr. Milne on his way to the inquest, and he gave evidence at the inquest. He denied at the inquest that he'd ever been anywhere near the hole. You know, the hole where the cigarette butts and water bottle were found with his DNA. He totally denied being anywhere near the hole. Later, though, his little sketch map was brought up. He didn't know anyone had that, with his handwriting saying the hole. He then changed his mind and said, oh, well, they did go north, but they went to a different mine shaft, not the one where Ray's body was found. Okay, fine. He said he last saw the Kellets on the morning of March the 21st it was, after Ella ran away for the third time. Now, as I said, Ella's a farm dog. She does not chase kangaroos, but Milne's version was she chases kangaroos and she's run away for the third time. He got angry. He lent Jennie his quad bike so she could go off with Ray to look for the dog. And then he left the campsite, and this is on foot to prospect, and was away from the campsite, he said, for 18 hours. On foot with 3 pieces of bread, 2 litres of water, and that's all. For 18 hours. No sleep, nothing. And then having come back, he said he assumed Ray and Jennie were there because the quad bikes were there. He assumed they were asleep, so he packed up all his gear, including, he would have made quite a noise because his quad bike had to be driven up onto the trailer behind his vehicle. He said they didn't wake up, they didn't come out. He didn't want to disturb them, so he didn't say goodbye to them. He just left. So he's left after 18 hours without sleep, short on water and almost no food, and he decides to take the 700-kilometre journey back to Perth, as you do on no sleep. He told the police that he went in a certain direction down a certain road. Oh, and I should say, the time he got back to the site after this 18 hours prospecting was 2 or 3 a.m. So it's the middle of the night, the early hours of the morning as well, and then he leaves to go to Perth. Okay. Aerial view of what we saw. And just another picture of the shaft. And he said, firstly, that he went a certain direction, but what he didn't account for was the fact that there was a BP service station which had a CCTV camera where any vehicle going past would have been recorded on the camera. And there was no indication that Milne had ever been past that service station. Plus, later on, the police looked at his phone, which, by the way, he'd wiped when he came back to the city, got a friend to help him wipe all the information off it. And but the GPS, I think that was of his car, placed him on a completely different road at the relevant time. So he then, at the inquest, said, oh, well, I decided to go back to stick with the Kellets. So he turned around and went back, and he would call work to say, I won't be in the next day. And then he said his conscience got the better of him, so he turned around again and started heading towards work, but took a different route. That's how he explained all of that. Question, why didn't you originally tell police that you took two different roads and actually went back towards the campsite? Why didn't you do that? He said, because it was embarrassing, it would make me look like an idiot. That's what he said. I'm not going to interpret that. He then, interestingly, at the inquest, declined to answer any more questions on the basis that his answers might incriminate him. What's known in the US, I believe, as taking the fifth. Yeah? Okay, that's what he did. The findings of the inquest, Ray and Jennie, both found to have been murdered. The police recommended, and this was Mark Reynolds, who was in charge of forensic at the time, he wrote a big memo to the bosses recommending that murder charges be laid. The police sent the brief of evidence, the collection of evidence, to DPP, which is the Department of Public Prosecutions. It would be the equivalent of Crown prosecuting in the UK and the equivalent of the DA's office in the US, am I right? Yeah, see, I'm multilingual as well. No end to my talents. And they said, no, we're not going to prosecute. There's not enough evidence. Now, I've seen charges laid with far less evidence than that, with the attitude being the jury, it's something that should go before the jury. But no, he's never been charged. I was never gone to trial. Okay. After that, because Dave Kellett, who was the person you saw in that video that decided it was going to play up, Dave Kellett has agitated and agitated. There are blogs, there's a website, there's a Facebook page. He contributed to that television show, and that show was Australia-wide and got enormous publicity. He has not given up and will not give up. It's now been 10 years. And in fact, it was the anniversary of Ray's death only a few days ago. And private people have offered to help. A private searcher came, worked for free, went down that very same mine shaft. Don't forget, the police have been down there, they've taken the body, they eventually took the cigarette butts. He went down the mine shaft and he found some clothing, didn't he? He found what they call a high-vis or high-visibility vest, which is the sort of thing mine workers wear on the job. And remember that Ray was found with no shirt on. He found that, and he didn't have to dig. He just moved some dirt and there it was. So that's been missed too. That was handed to the police. The police then did another search, and that's what this picture's all about. They did another search, and they announced they had found an item of interest. They haven't told Dave what it is, but they said it's an item of great evidentiary significance. Talk about dropping hints and then leaving the family in the dark. And that was a good 18 months ago, and we still don't know what the police found because they haven't told us. And nothing else has happened in the case from the police end. So this is just a picture of some of the private search. I lie. It's a picture of the police subsequent search, because the police then went back again. And as I say they found something of interest. Aerial view of the same search. Okay. Let's see how this one goes. There's no voice on this, so don't worry. This is a police video done for PR purposes about how careful they are and what they do. Done by the police public relations people, because the police are having a bit of a PR problem here. Okay. And yeah, they've found this item of interest. Since then, again, probably as a result of agitation by Dave Kellett, Ray's brother, there's been a $2 million reward offered by the police minister, $1 million per person, if you like. And there are ongoing searches. People are doing it as part of their weekend hobbies, people in the general area. Any number of people are still looking. But because there are hundreds of mine shafts there, if Jennie's body is anywhere, it's going to be very hard. It's the original needle in a haystack. On the other hand, did Jennie run away with Ray Milne? Because remember, we have Jennie's DNA on cigarette butts at the top of the hole and some sort of rumour that there might have been something happening between Ray, who in my view as a woman is exceptionally ugly, and I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole, but that's... Since when does my opinion matter? The family thinks that's highly doubtful. And if she did run away with him, how come he's still out and about and nobody has seen hide nor hair of Jennie since? She'd have to be very well hidden, and why would anybody do that? Unless she's very well hidden down the bottom of a mine shaft and she's dead. So that's where that investigation stands at the moment. I felt in advance a little bit guilty telling you this one, because I know everybody who watches television and watches true crime likes everything sewn up at the end in a nice, neat little package. However, that's not life. That's not how it is. So this is real life. This is people I know and care about, having met them and stayed in touch with them. These were people who were well loved, and I don't believe there's any such thing as closure, but there is nothing. There are no answers for the family. And part of why there are no answers, I think, is because, again, the police started with a particular view of what had happened, and everything was treated in that way, including, as I said, leaving Milne unattended at the campsite for overnight, and accepting his story about what he did, despite its inherent improbability. And there comes a point where it's very late in the piece to be able to gather more evidence. So, I should tell you, Ella was taken in by the family and lived a happy life and eventually died of old age last year. Ella, you know, the disobedient dog who was chasing kangaroos, Ella was so well trained that they'd actually left meat defrosting on a table at the campsite, and Ella did not touch it. And she easily could have. Instead, after it looks like several days, she set out and somehow found the little town, and that's how the alarm was raised. So yeah, Ella lived a quality life, and I love dogs, so that's important to me. Now, I found this, next slide, when I was on a cruise. I found it in a temple in Vietnam. And I'd like you to remember the sort of message I've been putting across about, hold your judgment. ABC, I said once, assume nothing, believe no one, check everything. We've talked about tunnel vision. We've talked about observer bias, which is a polite name for tunnel vision. Now, I found this, which is said to have been some of the sayings of Buddha. One bit's a bit blanked out, but I've typed it up in a minute. But just have a read of that and think, how closely does that fit with the sort of stuff I've been saying? I was amazed. It's not the Kama Sutra, by the way, it's the Kalama Sutra. Isn't that like exactly what I've been saying? Pretty much. Wow. So that was Buddha. So Buddha agrees with me, which is good. Yeah. And that's the bit you couldn't read. Isn't that look out for tunnel vision? Don't jump to conclusions. Think independently. Don't believe something just because somebody tells you. Okay. Now, this particular investigation, people have asked me what of these shows have I been involved in. Those are the 5 that I've done over the space of a couple of years. So if you are interested, you can use your phones and take a picture of that slide if you like, and you can find them all on YouTube. If you search on that on YouTube, you'll find it. I'm going to allow time for questions because I've been a bit stingy with question time in the first 2 presentations because they were packed full. But first I'm going to show you how to commit the perfect crime. And I really hope this one works. I suspect it's an issue out of my control, but we'll talk about it later and try and sort it out. So I assure you this won't happen again. But let's hope this one works because I love it.
There's a man who leads a life of danger. Meets, he stays as a stranger. Every move he makes, of you see.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Thank you.